Welcome to Cthulhu Flashdance Reviews. I'm Greg, and this is my review of WWE Superstar Showdown. WWE Superstar Showdown was designed by Sean Swigart. If I butchered your name, I apologize. Aaron Dill, and the design director was John Kovaleski. WWE Superstar Showdown is a game for 2 to 6 players, and basically you play as one or more WWE superstars who are competing in a match based on a stipulation that you determine in advance. You can play it as a singles event where you're just kind of duking it out, or you could put it into like a tournament mode or a championship belt run. Either way, let's get started. So this is how the setup for WWE Superstar Showdown looks like. You have 2 wrestlers in the ring. You have a deck of cards that represent each wrestler. This is the John Cena deck, and this would be the Randy Orton deck. Now, when you first are playing the game, you'll see these gold cards. As you can see on the bottom, there's like a little gold thing there. In the corner here, where my finger was, there's also gold. You would remove these from your superstar deck, and you add these in at a later game. But for now, they recommend taking them out because they suggest that using the gold rim cards for only the full event or the more advanced game modes. Otherwise, you can feel free to keep them in. So the 2 superstars will start in the middle of the ring. The game comes with these little circular holders for the miniatures. This way you can choose whatever wrestler you want, and it could be blue or red. This especially becomes handy when you play in tag team mode or Royal Rumble mode, where you have more than 1 wrestler per team in the middle of the ring. The rulebook also suggests you start your wrestlers at these 2 points. And this is the red side of the board, obviously, and that would be the blue side of the board. You have a discard pile slot, and you have a slot for your superstar card. Your superstar card has a picture of your superstar. In this case, would be Randy Orton. At the top, you'll see the numbers corresponding to the colors. That represents how many of those type of cards are in that superstar deck. The orange being the slam cards, red being grapple, yellow being strike, green being maneuver, and 6 are like guard or kick out cards, which I'll get to in a bit. Okay, now that the game is set up, we're ready to play. So after we've made sure we've thoroughly shuffled our superstar decks, the game is broken down into different rounds. The objective of the game is to pin your opponent and to get them down for a 3 count. Once that happens, you win the match. If you're only playing a single match, you win the game. If you're playing multiple matches or a tournament mode, then whoever wins the most matches, based on the stipulation, wins the game. So I'm going to show you a basic game here and then I'll kind of talk about the more advanced stuff. So the first thing you do is after you shuffle your deck is the draw phase. During the draw phase, each player draws 6 cards into their hand. So you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's John Cena's hand of cards. Okay, so now that you have your hand of cards, each player will then play 3 cards from their hand face down on the corresponding numbered rows. So John Cena and Randy Orton players going to play cards face down there, and then place 3 face down here. It doesn't really matter if they're facing you or your opponent, but easier to read. You want to make sure you're also thinking here strategically, because you're trying to guess what your opponent's going to play versus what you're playing. Because if you look at this chart here, which I will zoom in on in a minute, you'll see that it has a triangle. So the triangle here represents how each type is basically like a rock, paper, scissors. So grapple beats strike, strike beats maneuver, maneuver beats grapple, slam beats everything. So now that I've played this, or each player has played their 3 cards, you reveal them one at a time. So first you reveal the card in slot 1 at the same time as your opponent. So now, after you reveal the cards, you compare to see who won and who lost. Block cards always lose. As you can see here, this is a block card. It says block in the center. This one has a kick out on the bottom. That's always considered a losing card. Then Randy Orton's card here is a strike card, which would have beaten a maneuver card, but would have lost to a grapple card, which you kind of see at the on the card title as well. At the bottom here is the actions that it would do. So this card would normally, thanks to the power 2 icon there that you can see with the bicep flexing, would normally deal 2 damage to the opponent. But since they played a block card, they don't actually take any damage, even though this card was still the victor. The second icon you can see there is a move icon with an arrows and the 1. That means that the superstar can move 1 space. So you can do any of the icons in any order you wish. So normally what Randy Orton would have done here is he would have probably moved 1 space towards John Cena, and then he would have dished out his power to attack. But since John Cena played a block card, he doesn't actually lose any damage. I'm sorry, he doesn't take any damage, but he does lose the exchange. And I'll come to why that's important. So then this would normally go to the discard pile, while the strike card would stay on the table. He didn't take any damage, the Randy Orton player still gets to do the move action. So then, once that exchange is done, you would then flip over the next card. In this case, we have a grapple versus a maneuver. So, in this exchange, actually, John Cena has won because he put down a maneuver card, which beats a grapple card. And you can see from this maneuver card, there are 2 bicep flexing arms with a plus on it instead of a number with setup and a move 4. So John Cena could choose to move if he wants to, and what the pluses mean is that for the next card, you would gain an additional +1 to your power. In this case, he would get +2 because he has 2 on the card. As you can see from Randy Orton's card here, if he had won the exchange, he'd be able to move 1, followed by a power 2 attack, followed by a +1 setup for his next card. So he actually lost, so this goes into the discard pile. Now, since John Cena has won but hasn't done any damage yet, nothing else happens, but he can choose to move around, say, like behind Randy Orton. Depending on what his next card is, he would strategize that way. Finally, we flip over the third card, and here we have a tie. Oh no, they both played a strike card. John Cena played this strike card, which, as you can see from the icons on the bottom, has a stun, a knockout, a kick out, and a counter. And a corner. The way a corner card works is basically if John Cena was in a corner and he played this card and won, he could then move 3 spaces, for example, and do a power 3 attack against Randy Orton. The stun means that if you do any damage to your opponent, so in this case, he would have done a power 3 attack plus the 2 from his biceps in the previous card, and he would have done 5 total damage to Randy Orton. So now, if John Cena had delivered the 5 damage to Randy Orton would have to give up 5 cards or a block card to the John Cena player. If he chose to give a block card to the John Cena player, it negates all the damage, no harm, no foul. If he doesn't have a block card in his hand to give to the player, then he has to either give 5 cards from his deck, 5 cards from his hand, or any combination thereof. So, since you start with 6 cards and you only have 3 in your hand, you'd most likely give up 3 cards either from your hand if you didn't realize these are not that great, or you'd give 5 random ones, or 3 and 2, or 2 and 2 from your hand, 3 from the deck, 3 from your hand, 2 from the deck. Any combination you feel that the player judges appropriate. But since it was a tie, no damage happened. Also, because there's a stun on John Cena's card, if this had actually damage, he could then play another card from his hand. So let's say this was in my hand, I had these 3 cards. I could then play the grapple card and do additional attack damage. As you can see, this has a 3 on it, a kick out, and a plus. So stun cards are super powerful because they also prevent the other player from being able to play a block card from the damage. And if you can chain stuns, so if you have multiple stun cards in a row piled up on each other, you can do some serious damage to your opponent. So now if we look at Randy Orton's card, if he had won the exchange, he has a power M and a move of 1. What power M means is that you do damage equal to your amount of movement that you've done for that particular card. In this case, it's a move 1, so it wouldn't be super powerful where Randy Orton is now. He would basically move 1 step there and do a power 1 attack. But if Randy Orton was to say here on the rope space, you can bounce off the ropes, and the ropes allow you to move in a straight line as many spaces as you want. So you can move bounce 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bounce 1, 4, 5, and keep bouncing back and forth as much as he wants. So with this momentum attack, he might bounce 1, 2, 3 and do a power 3 attack, for example. Then that becomes a much more powerful card. And if your opponent is at the end of a long bounce, so for example, if he's on the fifth space, you can do a power 4 attack. So move and momentum power attacks can be very powerful if you set up your character to be in the right spot. But in this case, neither one of them successfully had their cards. So what happens now? Well, you can't have a tie. So what happens now is you reveal that you flip the top card of your decks, respectively, at the same time, and you see what happens. Oh, no. So Randy Orton got a block card. This is one of the advanced cards, so we'll ignore that one for now. I'll take those out of the deck real quick. So we have a maneuver card. The maneuver card here has a 4 and a reversal and a kick out. John Cena's card is a strike card, which has a 2, a power move again, and a stun. So here, John Cena actually won the exchange because, once again, strike beats maneuver. So Randy Orton would have lost this particular exchange. However, he has a reversal card. And what a reversal card does is basically when the card loses, you have a chance to actually win. And the way that works is you look in your hand, and let's say Randy Orton had these 3 cards in his hand. He had a grapple, a strike, and a maneuver. So we have a grapple, a strike, and a maneuver card. You would then look at the pyramid and go, okay, grapple beats strike. John Cena has a strike, so I'm going to throw down my grapple card. Now, Randy Orton is actually the winner of the exchange, and John Cena is the loser. So he would lose 1 card to the discard pile, and this card would go to the discard pile because that's the card that was tied, and he would lose this exchange. Randy Orton here did an inverted backbreaker, which has a power 2, a stun, and a throw, which is this last icon here. So what that means is he's not near John Cena at the moment, so actually that card doesn't really help him. But if he was, let's say, here for this purposes, he would have done a 2 power attack, which then would cause John Cena to lose 2 cards. But John Cena happens to have a block card in his hand, so he can give that to the Randy Orton player, who then would keep that card pretty much wherever you want it. You could keep it. There's no place on the board for it, but you would give it to the player. This doesn't become part of their hand. It's basically taken as part of the momentum. Otherwise, he would have to dish out 2 cards, either from his hand or randomly from the deck, and give those to Randy Orton. And so in this case, he lost 1 instead of 2. Now, the throw card allows you to pick up your opponent and throw them 3 spaces. So you can throw 1, 2, or 3 out of the ring, throw them there, throw them there, throw them in any direction you want. You can throw them 3 spaces away. It also has a stun, so then he would be able to play another card on top of that grapple card, potentially doing even more damage. So he plays a maneuver. He wouldn't play this maneuver card because it gives you +++, so it would really not be advantageous here. But he might play the strike card, and so basically he throws him out of the ring, or let's say he throws him here to be 2 spaces away, then moves up 2 and does another 2 damage to John Cena. So stuns and chaining cards can be very powerful and can be pretty devastating to your opponent. So once the round is over, so John Cena would then discard this card because it was a lost card, and Randy Orton would have these 2 cards here. And this one would be discarded because it was the card that was tied and didn't actually win, while these 3 cards are part of the winning stack. Because you remember this one had a reversal on it. So you would count up how many cards on each side were winning. So you have 1, 2, and 3. So we have 3 cards because this one was technically a losing card. So John Cena has 1 win. Randy Orton has 3 wins. And that means Randy Orton won the exchange. Now, if Randy Orton is adjacent to John Cena, he could then try to pin John Cena. When John Cena gets pinned, he has a chance to kick out of the pin or he loses the game. Now, if John Cena has a kick-out card in his hand like this one, he could then give it to the Randy Orton player immediately and doesn't get pinned, and then you go on to the next round. If he does not have a kick-out card in his hand, then you would reveal cards one at a time until the kick-out card was shown, like this one. Now, you can also have a kick-out card, like we saw earlier, on a card like the guillotine leg drop. It doesn't have to necessarily be a blocked card that you give up to your opponent. Now, let's say he didn't draw it. You keep drawing the cards until you've either drawn 3 cards or a kick-out happens. If you draw 3 cards and no kick-out happens, then that player is pinned, and the game is over. So the game could end relatively quickly, just like a wrestling match, or it can go on for a while. Another way to lose a game is if you run out of cards from giving up too many, and then you can't play 3 cards from your hand onto the board. At the end of a round, you take all the cards that were win or losses that were not given to the opponent, obviously, and you put them into your discard piles. At that point, you start a new round. You draw up to 6 cards again in your hand, and then you play them on the board, rinse and repeat until there is a victor. Now, if a superstar is outside the ring, so let's say Randy Orton picked up John Cena and threw him outside, or you decide to go outside the ring to catch your breath, there are 3 things that can happen. If you lose in exchange to another player, so let's say John Cena played this card, the maneuver card, here on, let's say it was the 3rd round, and he played that there, and Randy Orton had played a grapple card. So maneuver would be grapple, so John Cena's fine. But if it was reversed, if Randy Orton was outside the ring and John Cena was in the ring and he won, Randy Orton would have to give up his grapple card to John Cena player instead of putting it in his discard. So he'd actually lose a potentially very valuable card because he's outside the ring. The advantage of being outside the ring is you can't be pinned. So you can be out there, you can lose cards and catch your breath without worrying about being pinned in the game. But you can still lose the game if you run out of cards. So you have to be careful if you're outside and try to get back inside as quickly as possible. But you may not have a choice because you may not have very many movement cards in your hand. Alternatively, while you're outside, if at the beginning of a round you are still outside the ring, you can then take what they call catching a breath, grab all your discards, and basically reshuffle your deck. So that way you get the cards that were in your discard pile back into your deck, and then they can potentially come back into your hand pretty quickly. The only other way to get cards back into your hand is if you run out of cards from drawing and you still have cards in your discard, you take your discards, reshuffle them, and create a new draw pile. So really the only way to lose this game is to give up enough cards where you don't have 3 cards to draw from to play onto the board, or your opponent pins you and you can't get out of a count of 3. A couple other things I want to quickly explain to you is the slam cards. So slam cards, the way they work is they have slam written on them in the same place you would see a grapple, strike, or maneuver card. Just like the special move of John Cena's STF. So the slam, as you can see here, is a pretty powerful card. It has 4 power damage, and then it moves +2 to the next card for power. The beauty here about this slam card is that it trumps everything. So the only way to stop a slam card is either to play a block card where you just basically block the damage and give up that card, or you play a slam card yourself to tie if you think your opponent's going to play a slam card, and therefore you're able to draw a random card and hope that you win the exchange. The nice thing about the board is it also has these reference sheets on the side here. The references, they basically explain what all the icons in the game do and what they mean. There's also a move setup card, which I haven't shown, but basically it looks like the move card with the arrows, but there's a plus in the center. It means the same thing, where on your next turn you can move an extra space. Finally, the game has these large match cards. The large match cards have special rules depending on what type of match you want to play. So if you don't want to just do a singles, you can do a tag team match, 6-man tag team match, which is how 6 players get involved. You can do a head-to-head match, which is pretty much the standard match that I just showed you, except for you score 30 ranking points. So if you wanted to, for example, do this as part of a tournament. There's also the gauntlet, which allows you to have special stipulations as well within the match. And at the bottom here, it tells you how, if it's a long or short game based on the match type. So there's long, medium, and short. So short game could last pretty quick. It can last a few minutes to 10 minutes to, I would say at most, a half an hour, depending on whether people are hesitant to pin another player because they threw them too far, or didn't move, and they weren't adjacent. But usually it's a pretty quick game. You can play a couple of sessions in a row pretty fast. And the game also includes some stipulation cards that add to the match as well. So stipulation cards have special rules on them, so you can have special match types other than like a 6-man tag team challenge. You can also do, like, for example, a Money in the Bank match. The Money in the Bank match says that the winning team may choose one free bonus superstar card, which was the gold rimmed ones. There's a rope break card where you may not pin in a rope square, submission mats, standard rules, which is pretty much what you do normally. There is endurance matches, falls count anywhere where you can pin out somebody outside the ring, hardcore matches where you can't play block cards from your hand to prevent damage, and last man standing where you don't pin your opponents, but you actually have to keep going until somebody runs out of cards and can't play 3 cards. So this adds a lot of diversity to the game. You can pull a random stipulation out if you want to make a little more diversity and not necessarily choose which match you're going to play. You can do tournaments, and you can do different match types. So that, in a nutshell, is how you play WWE Superstar Showdown. Overall, I really, really enjoyed WWE Superstar Showdown. I think it's a really good game. It's simple, it's fun, it captures the theme and excitement of a wrestling match. They did a really solid job with the game, and the components are really nice. You can see from the board. It's got, like, kind of the colors are bright and vibrant. They're easy to see. The numbers are big. Even the reference sheet, which is really hard to see in this video, is pretty clear. It's pretty easy to read when you're sitting down and looking down at the board. A lot of games have very tiny font, which even sitting at this distance, it would be really hard to see. But this game, they did a really good job. My complaints about the board are that it does kind of, not warp, but it does billow up a little bit. Where the crease is in the center. Also, they don't really have enough room for more than 2 players. So if you wanted to, let's say, do a Royal Rumble match where you have all the wrestlers in the ring at the same time, all 6, you can't. You can't. I mean, you can, but you can't put them on the board. You have to put them on the table, which is a minor thing. It would have been nice to have, like, on the back of the board, for example, where it's blank, if they had, like, the 2+ player mode, where, like, if you have 3, 4, 5, or 6 players, they have spaces for that. Or alternatively, they could have given, like, little player sheets, sort of like what they did with the stat card, but make these like an actual player sheet so that you can play your cards on there. That way it wouldn't matter, it'd just be gathering around the board. Otherwise, I really like what they did with the board. I think it's great. There's a lot of games that don't do that, that don't have kind of a board that you can easily play where you know where to put your cards and clean up and this reference sheet. And it's all pretty much right in front of you, so it's really easy to teach this game because it's pretty simple. It takes a little bit, I would say like 1 or 2 turns to really get comfortable with what all the icons mean, but because it's on the board, it's nice and easy to follow. Pinning opponents gets really, really stressful if you don't have a pin card in your hand. And because you do have the stats at the top here to show you how many cards you have in your... You know, for example, that John Cena has 6 guard cards. So if you've played like 4 guard cards to prevent damage, you have 2 more and they're not in your hand. You know they're in your deck somewhere and you get pinned. You start sweating a little bit, not knowing if that's going to come up. Because there's also cards. Because there's also action cards. Move cards that basically have pins on them. So you're hoping that a kick-out card shows up. That way you don't get pinned, you don't lose the game. I played one round with a friend where I was just like demolishing him, like completely winning the game. And then just like in a real wrestling match, the momentum changed suddenly with like one card that he played really well that I lost to, and then all of a sudden it just completely changed, and I started losing like left and right, and then I ended up getting pinned, and then or I gave up. I can't remember what happened exactly, but I either giving up is where you run out of cards to play, and that was a pretty awesome game. Like it was really intense. It was going back and forth for a while. We were really at each other's, like trying to read each other, trying to like go, okay, I think you're gonna play this card, boom, and then I guessed wrong, and now I lost. So that was fun. I really like that kind of thing about this game is that it can get really intense really quickly. The miniatures themselves are pretty cool, as you can see with the Big Show here. Get a little bit closer for you. I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry. I'm using a webcam, but it's pretty good details on the miniature. It's a pretty solid miniature. It resembles the wrestlers well enough. The base game right now, I know they're coming out. They plan to have some expansions for it. Has Daniel Bryan, The Big Show, Big E, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, and John Cena. So, which is a little bit disappointing. They didn't have like Ryback, who's one of my favorite wrestlers, or even like Seth Rollins, or some of the more guys that are at the top of the wrestling when this game came out. I was actually surprised that they included Big E and Roman Reigns, who are not at the time when this game was made were not huge fan favorites, even though they're really good wrestlers. And now Big E with his New Day has become a very popular wrestler. As you can tell, probably I'm a big wrestling fan. I've been a big wrestling fan since the 80s. So this game hit home for me. You don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy this game at all. It works even if you're not a wrestling fan. These little miniature holders are really well that they include these. They kind of make it a lot easier to determine the different teams, and they fit the miniatures pretty tightly so they don't just fall off when you pick up a miniature like I've seen in some games. So it was really great that they included these. The production quality is fantastic. I mean, of the cards, they're photos of the wrestlers doing various moves. So that's pretty cool. And each one has their own wrestler doing, kind of their own moves with the corresponding cards. So you see, here's the John Cena one. And they also have the wrestler on the back. So the decks are easy to separate and easy to find. The game comes with the deck separated in the insert and a miniature attached to the deck. The stats card has stats on the back, which makes it really easy to identify it and not accidentally shuffle it into your deck. The stats are clean. It's got a little bit of information about the wrestlers. It's got their height, their weight, and as well as their signature moves. So it's like it's nice to have a little bit of facts about the wrestlers that you're playing in case if you don't know. My biggest complaint with the game, other than the board, is the miniatures sizes. While they look great, and I really like the fact that they came out with miniatures for each wrestler, I wish they had made them a little bit more to scale. So, for example, Daniel Bryan is 5'10", and which is pretty short for a wrestler, but about average height for a person, me being 5'11". But then the Big Show is 7 feet tall, and as you can see from the miniatures, he doesn't look 7 feet tall. Like, he looks like he is maybe 6'3", or is it only it looks like he's less than a foot taller than Daniel Bryan. And John Cena, who is 6'1", also stands pretty close to the same size as Daniel Bryan, which, that makes sense because he's only about 3 inches taller, but he doesn't look like he's 3 inches taller in this miniature. He looks like he's the same height. So it's a minor issue. It doesn't ruin the fun of the game, but it would have been nice to be able to look down at the board and see this giant Big Show looming over all the other miniatures. Like, that would have been just really cool. And they could have, if they just made him half, maybe an inch taller or something. Just something to show that he's kind of massively towering over the other wrestlers, just like you would see in a WWE match on TV. But like I said, while that was my major complaint with the game, it's a very minor complaint comparatively. This game, the rule book is pretty easy to follow. It's not super easy to find certain rules, like if you were looking for like how do you pin somebody, or how do you get out of a pin, or looking for something specific because it's not really like most Gale Force 9 games. It's laid out pretty well, but then looking for a rule can be difficult. However, there's the section where they cover all the actions is pretty well laid out, so you can easily look through them. I wish that they had made them alphabetical, so that way it'd be a lot quicker to look for, rather than what seems kind of random. The nice thing is they have a pretty detailed sample first round, where they use John Cena and Randy Orton. And so you can, after you read the rules, you can quickly go through that, get a feel for what the game feels like and looks like in the sample rules. Then in the back they have tag team rules followed by advanced rules. And the nice thing that I like they put on the back here is they also put, if you want to do an event, they put like sample events of how you can run them. So you can see here, for example, you have the Ultimate Endurance matches, the tag team series, and the SmackDown series. So if you want to put on like a pay-per-view show, here's some examples. Otherwise, you could do it randomly, pull out a random stipulation card, toss it so that way you can't re-pull out that card. Maybe even pull out a random match type with and then so you can do all kinds of different combinations to keep the game flavorful, which is why I gave this game a solid 9 out of 10. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you do, if you are interested in the game, if the game sounds fun to you, I hope you pick up a copy. Hello, and welcome to my segment about whether or not this belongs on your shelf. I would say for WWE Superstar Showdown is a pretty easy one. I think this belongs on everybody's shelf who is a gamer. If you like thematic games, you like simple games, you like games without dice, this is definitely going to hit all three of those. It's one of the few games that I've seen where it's very simple, like almost like a Reiner Knizia type of simple game. Like a Raw or something along those lines, where they have very little rules, but they have a lot of complexity to the strategy, to the overall feel of the game, where you feel like you're playing a much more complex game than you are based on the rules. And so that from me is pretty high praise, because I really like Reiner Knizia games as well. And so if you're looking for a game that is different than anything you've really played, that uses like the Robo Rally type of mechanic of pre-programming or Space Alert, then definitely would pick this game up, and I think it does have room. If you're a WWE Superstar fan of any of the Superstars, or even the show, or anything related to wrestling, do yourself a service and get this game, because this is probably the best wrestling game I played that's out there. I still have not played a couple others like Top Promoter or the Luchador Wrestling one that's a die rolling one. So I don't know how it compares to those yet. Once I play those, I'll do a review. But as of right now, this is the best kind of fighting game of this style. It's definitely, there was an Ultimate Fighting Championship game that came out. I would not recommend that game. Perhaps I'll do a review of that one of these days. If you already have that game, I would still recommend buying this game. I also played the WWE Trivia game, which came out a few years ago, which also wasn't that great. So it's great to see this license being used properly and in the safe hands of Gale Force 9, which so far have not disappointed me. I've played pretty much at this point all but one of their games and have pretty much enjoyed every single one. So they keep hitting home runs. So if you're a Gale Force 9 fan, definitely pick this game up. If you're a wrestling fan, definitely pick the game up. If you're a fan of simple but thematic games, pick this game up. So I basically can come to the conclusion that this definitely has room on your shelf for it. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Also, I do apologize for some of the technical difficulties of the camera, the blurriness and the lighting. But have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.